She was only 11 years old, dressed in a simple yellow hoodie. Nothing about her screamed wealth, power, or status. She quietly walked toward her first-class seat, clutching a small diary to her chest. But the moment she politely asked the man sitting there if he might be in the wrong seat, everything shattered. Within seconds, a grown man exploded, passengers froze, crew rushed in, and the entire flight was forced to a sudden halt. Cameras came out. Voices rose. Headlines formed. Yet what the world didn't know, not yet, was that this ordinary little girl was actually the youngest black billionaire heiress alive, and fate was about to expose the truth. The camera opens on a soft, golden glow flooding the jet bridge. Amid the blur of rushing passengers and echoing footsteps, Aaliyah Monroe walks calmly, almost floating, her small suitcase rolling behind her in a perfect rhythm. At just 11 years old, she carries herself with a grace far beyond her age. Chin slightly lifted, shoulders relaxed, a quiet confidence that isn't loud, but unmistakable. She wears a light cream cardigan, tiny gold stud earrings, and a neatly braided ponytail that sways gently as she walks. Nothing flashy, nothing shouting wealth, yet everything about her feels refined, composed, almost cinematic, because Aaliyah wasn't just any child. She was the only daughter of Aaliyah Monroe, the tech visionary whose company reshaped global education systems and made him a billionaire before he turned 35. For Aaliyah, first class wasn't luxury. It was Friday. Private jets, penthouses in 3 countries, violin tutors, personal security, all normal parts of her world. But still, she remained soft-spoken, humble, and endlessly curious. She preferred sketching in her diary over any expensive gadget her father bought her. But here's the truth. Most people never looked closely enough to see any of that. When strangers looked at her, they didn't see a billionaire heiress or the prodigy who'd already spoken at 2 global youth conferences. They didn't see the girl who memorized poems, who volunteered at children's shelters, who hugged every staff member at home by name. No, they only saw a little black girl, but a child they assumed didn't belong in the world she walked through so effortlessly. And today, on this flight, one man's assumptions were about to ignite a storm Aaliyah never asked for, but one that would change everything. Aaliyah approached seat 2A with the same gentle politeness her father taught her from the day she learned to speak. She paused, looked at her boarding pass once more, then offered a warm smile to the man already sitting there, a man in his mid-40s, gray suit, shiny watch, the kind of confidence that comes from being told yes his whole life. Aaliyah cleared her throat softly. "Excuse me, sir, you're in my seat." She didn't sound entitled. She didn't sound demanding, just calm, respectful, like a child who believed the world was as fair as she tried to be. The man didn't even look up at first. He just sighed dramatically, as if he were being bothered by a fly. When he finally glanced at her, his eyebrows tightened. "Your seat?" he scoffed, his voice dripping with disbelief. "Little girl, I think you're confused." Aaliyah held up her boarding pass with both hands. "No, sir. It says 2A. That's—" He cut her off sharply. "There's no way. First class is not for kids wandering up here by accident." Then he pointed vaguely behind her. "Go back to economy. Someone back there will help you." A hush fell over the cabin that a woman in the next row paused mid-sip of her champagne, that a couple across the aisle exchanged wide-eyed glances, that the flight attendant stopped rearranging the luggage in the overhead bin, slowly turning toward the sound. Aaliyah felt her chest tighten, not from fear, but from the familiar sting she had experienced too many times in too many places. Judgment, assumption, dismissal. She swallowed it gently, the way she always did. "Sir," she tried again, her voice steady but soft. "I'm not lost. This really is my seat." The man pulled off his glasses and leaned forward, his voice lowering into something darker. "Listen, I don't know what story you're trying to play here, but I paid for this seat. You don't belong up here." The word belong hit her like a flick to the heart. Phones began rising, quietly, almost instinctively. Screens angled, cameras discreetly recording. Passengers sensed they were watching something wrong, something ugly, something that shouldn't be happening to any child, let alone one who had spoken with such gentle courtesy. Aaliyah took a breath the way her father taught her. three. But her hands trembled, just slightly. She wasn't scared of him. She had been in boardrooms filled with CEOs. She had met presidents and diplomats. She had given a TEDx talk at age 10. But this wasn't about intellect or confidence. This was about a stranger deciding who she was before even asking her name. The flight attendant finally stepped in, voice firm but empathetic. "Sir, may I please see your boarding pass?" He rolled his eyes but handed it over. She scanned it. Blink. Scan again. Blink. "Sir, this is 3A, not 2A. Your seat is 1 row back." The man's face flushed red, but instead of apologizing, he doubled down. "You expect me to believe that this—" He gestured at Aaliyah with a dismissive flick of his hand. "This child is sitting in first class? Alone?" A few passengers gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh, hell no." Another muttered, "Why is he talking to her like that?" Aaliyah stood still, her grip tightening around her boarding pass. She blinked fast, refusing to let tears fall. Tears not of fear, but of frustration. She had done nothing wrong. She had followed every rule. She had spoken kindly. Still, she was being treated like she didn't deserve the seat she rightfully owned. She looked at the man, and for a moment, her calm cracked. She felt 11 dust small, alone. But then she remembered her father's words. "Confidence isn't loud, sweetheart. It's steady. It's choosing kindness even when someone else chooses cruelty." So she lifted her chin. Not too high, not in arrogance, just enough to show she wouldn't shrink. "Sir," she said quietly, "I travel first class all the time. I didn't take your seat. I just want to sit in mine." Her voice was soft, but unshakable. The businessman scoffed again. "Oh, please. Your parents probably bought you the ticket without telling you where you belong. You people always think." The cabin froze. Even the air stopped moving. "You people." Those two words changed the temperature of the entire plane. Passengers who had been silent suddenly shifted forward. Someone whispered, "Is he serious right now?" Another passenger, an older black woman, clutched her chest and shook her head slowly. And the phones weren't discreet anymore. They were up, recording clearly. Some passengers had already opened the live screen. Others typed furiously. The flight attendant stepped between them now, jaw tight. "Sir, that language is unacceptable." He threw his hands up. "Oh, come on. It's a fact. I'm not letting a random kid take my seat while I sit behind and coach like some." He didn't finish because the pilot's voice boomed from behind them. "Is there a problem here?" For a moment, no one breathed. Aaliyah didn't speak. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just held her boarding pass with both hands, waiting, wishing the world would see her for who she truly was. Not a stereotype, not a child out of place, but a girl trying to go home. What happened next would ground the plane, make headlines, and expose a truth the man never expected. Because he wasn't arguing with a random child, he was humiliating a girl whose identity he hadn't even imagined. Aaliyah Monroe, the youngest black billionaire heiress in the world. The cabin was thick with tension, a silence so sharp it could have cut through steel. Aaliyah stood frozen, clutching her boarding pass like it was the only thing anchoring her to the ground. The businessman stared at her with a mix of annoyance and superiority, as if her very presence offended him. And then he said it again, louder this time. "You people, always causing problems." The words hung in the air, poisonous, heavy, undeniable. That a woman across the aisle snapped her head up. The young man stopped typing on his laptop and whispered, "No way." Even a teenager removed his headphones, brows knitted. But the businessman wasn't done. He leaned back in his seat, crossed his arms, and smirked. "Know your place, little girl. You don't belong up here with us." A stunned gasp traveled through the cabin like a wave. Aaliyah felt the words hit her, not like a slap, but like a slow, stinging burn. She had heard comments like these whispered before, but never shouted, never in front of dozens of people, never with so much venom. She steadied herself, inhaling deeply the way her father taught her, in 2-3 out 2-3, but the next blow came harder. "You can't even afford a first-class seat. Stop pretending." Aaliyah's heart squeezed, her breath catching. She had money, more money than this man would ever touch in his lifetime. But that wasn't the point. She shouldn't have to prove her worth. Not because of her age, not because of her skin. Before she could respond, a flight attendant hurried over, a blonde woman with a crisp uniform and a smile that instantly faded as she assessed the situation. "What's going on here?" she asked, but her tone carried an assumption that Aaliyah was the problem. Businessman jumped in quickly, gesturing at Aaliyah with exaggerated frustration. "This girl is trying to steal my seat. I paid for 2A. She's refusing to leave." Aaliyah's mouth opened, but only a small sound escaped. I didn't." The flight attendant held up a hand, cutting her off. "Sweetheart, you shouldn't be in first class without an adult. Are your parents somewhere on board?" "No," Aaliyah whispered. "I'm traveling alone." "But this really is..." Again, the attendant didn't let her finish. Her expression hardened, her voice sharpening with authority she didn't bother to hide. "You need to go back to economy. Now." Gasps rippled. Someone muttered, "Is she serious?" Another whispered, "She didn't even check the boarding pass." Aaliyah felt her throat tighten. Her boarding pass trembled in her hand. The businessman smirked, settling deeper into the seat, a man enjoying the world bending in his favor. The flight attendant continued, "If you don't move, I may have to call security." Aaliyah's eyes widened in disbelief. Security? For her? For asking for her assigned seat? The injustice burned hot in her chest. But it really is my seat," she whispered, holding out her boarding pass like a lifeline. "Please just look." The attendant leaned down, face inches from Aaliyah's, voice icy. "I don't need to look. First class is full, and this gentleman is already seated. Stop making a scene." A collective murmur rose from the passengers. "She didn't make the scene. He started it. This isn't right. She's just a kid." But the attendant ignored all of it. "I'm warning you. Either you sit in economy, or you will be removed from the aircraft." Aaliyah's eyes stung. Her chest ached. Her voice trembled. Why was no one listening? Why wouldn't they even check? She wasn't being loud. She wasn't being disrespectful. She wasn't doing anything wrong. Yet here she was, being treated like an intruder. She bit her lip, fighting the urge to cry. Crying meant weakness, and she refused to be weak in front of someone who already believed she was. Passengers shifted uncomfortably. A tall man in seat 1C raised his hand. "Ma'am, I think you should check her pass." She said it's her southeast. The flight attendant shot him a sharp glare. "Sir, please stay out of it." The businessman laughed under his breath. Finally, someone with sense. Aaliyah's stomach churned. Every second felt like her dignity was slipping through her fingers. The flight attendant placed a firm hand on Aaliyah's back, guiding her toward the aisle. "Come on now. Let's go." Aaliyah stepped back, shaking her head slowly. "No, PL please. I didn't lie. I didn't take a seat. I'm just trying to sit where I'm supposed to." Her voice cracked, a tiny fracture that made her sound younger than she felt. The attendant sighed loudly, shaking her head. This is exactly why children shouldn't travel alone. Another blow. Another judgment. Someone in row 3 raised their phone higher, recording openly now that a woman whispered, "They're really doing this to her?" Another added, "You know why. We all know why." The businessman leaned forward, voice low and malicious. "This is what happens when you don't know your place." The world tilted. Aaliyah felt her breath stutter. Her vision blurred for a moment. This wasn't about a seat, that IT was about who she was, and who he believed she wasn't. Her pulse pounded in her ears. She felt 11. She felt small. She felt crushed under the weight of a prejudice she had never earned. She stood there trembling, the attendant towering over her, the businessman gloating, the passengers torn between outrage and paralysis. Phones kept recording. Whispers grew louder. The injustice was too obvious to ignore now, too hateful, too blatant. But still, the attendant pushed. "I'm calling security." Those words snapped something inside Aaliyah. Not anger, not rebellion, but a quiet, breaking hurt. She looked up, tears pooling but not falling. This was the world her father tried to shield her from. This was the world she hoped was getting better. This was the world that still judged her by the color of her skin before the content of her character. But soon, very soon, the world would learn exactly who she was. And the consequences would shake everything. Because they weren't just humiliating a child. They were humiliating Aaliyah Monroe, heir to a billion-dollar global empire. And justice was coming. Aaliyah stood perfectly still, the flight attendant's threat hanging in the air like the final strike of a gavel. Security. Removal. Humiliation. All for something she didn't do. The businessman leaned back with the smug satisfaction of someone used to winning, used to watching the world bend to his voice, his anger, his convenience. Passengers watched with wide eyes and tightened jaws. Phones kept recording. Some people shook their heads. Some whispered prayers. Some waited for the moment this little black girl would finally break. But Aaliyah didn't break. She inhaled slowly, steady, controlled, and wiped the corner of her eye with her thumb. No tears. No fear. She wasn't giving anyone that power. She reached into the small pocket of her cardigan and pulled out a phone unlike anything anyone had seen before. Slim. Crystal-edged. Monogrammed with a tiny golden AMA device custom-built. But no one here knew that yet. The flight attendant placed her hands on her hips. "And what do you think you're doing?" Aaliyah looked up, calm again, her voice soft but unwavering. "I think I should call my father." A few passengers chuckled. The businessman outright laughed. A deep, mocking laugh that echoed through the cabin. "Oh, please," he sneered. "What's Daddy going to do? Buy the airline?" Aaliyah didn't answer. She just tapped a single contact, the only one pinned at the top. She turned on the speaker, 0.3 rings. Passengers smirked. The flight attendant folded her arms, impatience dripping from her posture. Then, clicked out a voice came through the speaker. Deep, sharp, commanding enough to make the hairs on everyone's neck stand straight. "Aaliyah? Sweetheart, are you on the plane? What's wrong?" His tone was calm, but beneath it was something powerful and unmistakable. Aaliyah swallowed. "Daddy," someone saying, "I don't belong in my seat. They're trying to move me." There was a pause. A cold, dangerous pause. "Put me on speaker. Now." Aaliyah's thumb hovered for a second before tapping the icon. The businessman yawned dramatically, rolling his eyes as if this were all a performance. The flight attendant sighed. "Sir, this is a safety matter. We need—" "Who are you?" the voice boomed. The flight attendant blinked, taken aback. "This is your daughter's flight attendant." "Sir, there's been a misunderstanding, and state your full name." The firmness in the voice made several passengers sit straight. The attendant faltered. "And my name is Claire. Claire Henderson." A brief silence. Then the cabin shook, not physically, but emotionally, as the man on the phone spoke again, his words resonating with absolute authority. "This is Marcus Thompson, CEO of Thompson Global Industries, owner of JetSky Aviation Group, the parent company that owns the very airline you're standing on." A collective gasp erupted. Someone dropped their phone at a man in row 2 whispered, "Holy." The businessman's smirk vanished. The flight attendant's face drained of color. Marcus wasn't just a billionaire, he was the billionaire, the kind whose name appeared in government meetings, global economic forums, and the Forbes Top 10 list every year. His influence stretched across continents, and this flight, this airline, belonged to him. But that wasn't the part that shattered the cabin. Marcus continued, voice slow and deliberate, each word hitting with the weight of thunder. "And the little girl you are threatening to remove? The child you're humiliating in public? She's my daughter." Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. The businessman's jaw dropped. The flight attendant staggered back a step, her clipboard trembling in her hand. Every passenger leaned forward, frozen in disbelief. Marcus wasn't done. "Claire Henderson explained to me, very carefully, why my daughter is being denied her first-class seat." Claire stuttered. "Yes, sir. I was told you didn't check her boarding pass." Marcus snapped. "And no, sir, but you believed a stranger over a child," he thundered. "You threatened her. You touched her. You implied she didn't belong." Claire's lips quivered. "Yes, sir. I didn't mean." "You didn't mean?" Marcus repeated, voice like fire. "Where you simply didn't think you needed to treat a young black girl with respect." A woman in 4C put a hand over her mouth. A man muttered, "He's not wrong." Marcus wasn't yelling, but his calm fury was more terrifying than any scream. Then he turned his attention to the man in the seat. "And you, Marcus said slowly. State your name. The businessman shook his head, suddenly drenched in sweat. I don't believe I need to. Let me help you, Marcus said icily. My legal team is already identifying you through passenger records. But I prefer you say it yourself. The man swallowed hard. Richard. Richard Compton. Mr. Compton, Marcus said, you insulted my daughter. You used racist language. You attempted to take her seat. You humiliated her in front of an entire plane. Richard's throat bobbed as he tried to find words. I didn't know who she was. Oh, Marcus said, voice dripping with disdain. So racism is acceptable as long as the victim isn't wealthy? A murmur of shock rippled through the cabin. Richard looked helpless, cornered, exposed. Marcus wasn't finished. Captain. Everyone jerked their heads toward the cockpit door. A second later, it opened. The pilot stepped out nervously. Why, yes, sir. Marcus spoke with chilling calm. Ground the plane. Now. The captain stiffened. Understood. Passengers looked at each other, breathless. Marcus continued. No flight moves until my daughter is treated with the respect she deserves. Richard Compton tried again, desperate. Mr. Thompson, please. I made a mistake. Marcus did not raise his voice, but the entire plane felt the blade of his words. You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. A hush fell so heavy that even the engines seemed to quiet. And now, Marcus said, there will be consequences. Passengers stared at Aaliyah, some with awe, some with guilt, all with stunned silence. The little girl who moments ago was being mocked was now at the center of a storm that had turned the entire aircraft upside down. Aaliyah didn't gloat, didn't smirk, didn't savor the fear. She simply whispered, Daddy, can I just sit in my seat now? Marcus exhaled softly, a breath of heartbreak and rage. Yes, sweetheart. You sit wherever you want, and I'll handle the rest. And in that moment, every single person on that aircraft realized this wasn't just a child. This was Aaliyah Thompson, daughter of one of the most powerful men in the world, and the man they tried to belittle, they now feared. The moment Marcus Thompson's voice thundered through the cabin, everything changed. The flight crew stood frozen, the businessman pale and trembling, passengers wide-eyed as the reality hit them like a shockwave. They hadn't just mistreated a child. They had targeted the daughter of one of the most powerful men in the world. Marcus' voice cut through the silence like a blade. Captain, stop this aircraft. Return to the gate. Now. No hesitation in no argument. The captain responded instantly. Why, yes, sir. Within seconds, the engines powered down, the doors were locked, and the plane began slowly taxiing back. A ripple of panic surged through the staff. Claire, the flight attendant, stepped back, shaking. Sir, please. I didn't realize, Marcus replied coldly. You didn't want to realize. Passengers murmured, she's really his daughter. They really did this over race. Oh my God, this is about to go viral. Phones were already recording everything. The humiliation, the racism, the injustice. Live streams exploded across social media. Millions would see it within minutes. When the aircraft reached the gate, the door swung open, and in walked airport security, airline executives, and 2 FBI agents. The atmosphere shifted from shock to absolute disbelief. One executive scanned the cabin, spotted Claire, and spoke with deadly calm. Miss Henderson, you are relieved of duty. Effective immediately. She gasped. Wait, please. No discussion, he said. Pack your things. Her face crumpled as she backed away, tears gathering, but no one stepped in. Not after what the entire cabin had witnessed. Then came Richard Compton. Security approached him slowly. Mr. Compton, you need to come with us. He shook his head violently. Wait. It was a misunderstanding. I didn't know who she was. One FBI agent narrowed his eyes. You used racist language toward a minor on federal transportation property. That is a civil rights violation under Title 18. Gasps exploded. A woman whispered, he's going to be on the news tonight. Richard's voice cracked. I can't be arrested. Please. Security lifted him from the seat as passengers filmed openly. He stumbled, red-faced, humiliated, reduced from arrogance to begging in seconds. Aaliyah watched quietly. not with satisfaction, but with a soft sadness. She didn't want revenge. She wanted dignity. She wanted this never to happen to another kid who looked like her. That Marcus's voice came through the phone again. Gentler now. Sweetheart, are you okay? Aaliyah nodded. I just want to sit down. The captain approached her personally, lowering his head with deep respect. Miss Thompson, please allow me to escort you to your seat. The entire first-class cabin rose in applause as Aaliyah walked toward 2A, the seat she'd earned, the seat she deserved, the seat someone tried to deny her simply because of her skin. As she sat, the captain knelt beside her. On behalf of this airline, on behalf of this crew, I am deeply sorry. Your strength was extraordinary. Aaliyah smiled softly, small, humble, but strong. Thank you. The plane doors closed again. Engines roared back to life. And as they prepared for takeoff, Marcus spoke once more through the speaker. I'm proud of you, he said. You stayed calm. You stayed kind. That's real strength. Aaliyah looked out the window, watching the runway lights blur. Daddy, I just want people to treat each other better. He exhaled, voice full of love. One day, sweetheart, people will learn. And today, because of you, millions were reminded. The plane lifted into the sky, carrying with it not just passengers, but a message felt around the world. Discrimination may try to steal your dignity, but justice, courage, and truth will always take it back. As the engines roared back to life and Flight 457 lifted into the sky, one truth remained crystal clear. Dignity has no age, and respect has no color. Aaliyah didn't just reclaim a seat. She reclaimed a moment for every child ever told they didn't belong. Her calm strength exposed prejudice, ignited accountability, and reminded the world that real power isn't loud. It's unshakable. And sometimes the smallest voice on the plane carries the biggest impact. Because when injustice rises, courage rises higher.